Just get your attention, please. I call the meeting to order. And as normally happens, when we have a guest speaker, we suspend our standing orders to allow the speaker the opportunity we've just been told that you might need to get away early. And I'm looking about the faces. Thank Christ for that. But no, generally speaking, you have all the time in the world you want until I get this book on this table.
Oh yes,
Okay.
I recognise that now.
Up you get, introduce yourself. Okay, here we go. Best the order, please.
Right. Good morning, my name is Agnes Tolmie. I'm actually been a Unite activist in legacy unions for the better part of 50 years, and I still attend my branch meetings. Can you hear me? No?
I didn't hear your name, I'm sorry.
My name is Agnes Tolmie.
Thank you, Agnes.
I'll pitch louder now, thank you for that. Anyway, I've been a Unite activist for many years, more than 50 years I would say, in different legacy unions through Unite, Amicus, Unify, Banking, Insurance and Finance Union, which was my original entry into the trade union movement that led to me being part of the Unite. The last time I was in this room, I think, was when I was presented with the gold badge, the Unite gold badge, and it seems such a long time ago, and it was a really good day for me and a very proud moment. But I'm here today, I've been invited here today to talk about the work that we do in the Scottish Women's Convention, and I'm the chair of the board of directors of that organisation, and we were set up a long time ago, more than 20 years ago, and the women responsible for initiating the Scottish Women's Convention at that time were also really good trade union women, Joanne Lamont, Margaret Curran, Jane Mackay, and so forth. And we thought at that time the Scottish TUC Women's Committee believed in the new Parliament that they needed a better focus on how to consult with and represent women in Scotland's views, and so eventually the Scottish Women's Convention was formed, and our main role is to consult with women, and we do through a number of consultations, as you yourself recognise when you're doing your consultations for Scottish Government or UK Government or any other organisation that wants to hear the views of retired members. And we are specifically about representing the views and advocacy of women's views in Scotland. And we run various events to seek these views. We have surveys, we have roadshows where we travel all over Scotland. We hold events in Glasgow and Edinburgh. But I realised quite quickly after a few years that the views we were gathering were mainly Central Belt, and that's why we decided that we wanted to go out from the borders, the islands, the Western Isles and so on. And life is different for women geographically in Scotland, and that's why we have to ensure that that wide representative of views is included in our reports. We have had controversial issues, as you're probably aware, we all have, with the different pieces of legislation that were meant to come from the Scottish Government and never came. For some reason or another they were dumped, and we know that in particular, not just the Scottish Government but the UK Government, with the WASPy women, for example. I mean, that's just ridiculous that they're still fighting for something, and we advocate and support them. The recent misogyny bill that was meant to happen, the Scottish Government invested a lot of money in consultations and hearings and all sorts of things to find that the women in Scotland were saying a misogyny bill would help them, would be beneficial for them, and particularly youngsters. And then that got ditched at the last minute. Ash Regan's bill recently, the vast majority of women were telling us that that's a bill that should have been supported. And women survivors of prostitution were telling us that that bill should have been supported. And women who survived prostitution were telling us their stories about how they entered prostitution, and not one of them did it willingly. Not one single woman of the hundreds of women we spoke to over the last 10 years have told us that they entered it willingly. We know that there are women who advocate for prostitution, and we know there are women who enter it voluntarily, but we never met any of them, albeit that we did try. And some of these women were very young girls when they were forced into prostitution. But all of them told us, every single one of them told us, that while they were in prostitution, they said, oh, it's okay, this is okay for me, because they were told to say that. But that's the way it is. So that legislation has fallen by the wayside as well. But we'll keep going on and going on, as they say. The other piece of controversy that we've been involved in was women, safe spaces for women. And we've been accused of being transphobic, which we're not. But we heard women who had suffered domestic abuse, rape, sexual abuse, tell us that when they phone a place to seek help and advice, when they're at their very lowest and darkest, they don't want a man to answer the phone. And I thought that was a simple request. So that was something we were embroiled in controversy as well. But we're trade unionists, that's life. We do get embroiled in controversy, we do get embroiled and take on the fight, and we do challenge when we think it's wrong. And in this case, I'm doing it for women as well. But there's lots of trade union women come to our events. We hold conferences. We held a conference a few years back on the menopause, and this was something the Scottish Government did pick up, and lots of employers now do have menopause policies for women. And that is something that we can say that we challenge. We are challenging the need for serious, honest, decent childcare in our country. It is wrong to think that you can just say you can have so many free hours and somehow that's magic. We need and we deserve, in all the years I've been active as a trade unionist and now in the Women's Convention, women need, families need, men need free childcare so that families can get back in, working in the community and making their home a better place. And we can deliver it at times of war, and the way things are going, we might have to deliver it again. We don't know what the Bampots are going to be doing next. But that, you know, as a word I use that people think are made up, and I think Donald Trump's a cockwomble, and that's what I said once. A big it's a proper word, don't look it up just now. It's a proper word, and it means a man with a good conceit of himself, thinks he's right about everything, and anyone ever displayed those qualities, it's certainly him. So that's the kind of work that we've been involved in. What else have we been doing recently? Yeah, we're doing an International Women's Day tomorrow. We normally hold it in the Scottish Parliament, but somebody said to me recently, and thank you to Unite, sometimes Unite Regional Committee gives a donation because it's very expensive and we're like publicly funded, so you don't get much, as you know. They get me for nothing, quite frankly. But anyway, we had we've been having it in Edinburgh for a long time, and we put buses on from Glasgow to take people through from Glasgow, women through from Glasgow, Dundee, Aberdeen and the borders. We try and involve as many women from across in the islands as well, and Unite in the past has given us donations towards these buses, because as you all know, even although these buses are, you know, members of Unite, we've got to give them their wages. But anyway, so I suppose in a sense I'm putting a begging bowl out there if you've got any influence, but nonetheless, so this year, due to requests, we are now having it in Glasgow, so the Lord Provost is hosting us tomorrow, and we've got about 350, 400 women coming to the city chambers. We've got schools, we're focusing it on Glasgow because we've never done that before. We've got schools in Glasgow, primary schools who are going to come and sing to us, and I'm really looking forward to that, and the EIS have been really good in getting that off the ground for us. We've got secondary school girls who are coming to do a presentation, and they've made a video, so it's helping them with their school projects as well and developing their skills. So they'll be making a presentation on the 850 years of Glasgow history and where women have been in that. So I expect it'll last about 5 minutes. No, it won't. They're going to make it. And one of the women who's speaking there tomorrow, and people have mixed emotions about her, who she's going to chair, Monica Lennon's coming along, and some other politicians, is Elaine C. Smith. The women love Elaine C. Smith, and she's dead nice and good with the women. But Elaine, last year, was awarded the Freedom of the City, and part of that freedom was that if she got the jail in that year, she would have a cell for herself. So I'm looking forward to hearing whether she took up their offer or not. Well, to be honest with you, I could talk for a very long time, and those that know me know that I can. But here's some idea of some of the consultations we've been involved in recently. Child poverty, the government's child poverty delivery plan, and we did a real critique of that because it always seems to be tinkering around the edges, and we have to let them know that. The equality and human rights, long-term conditions framework for workers. I don't know what experience you've had with some of the government bodies, the civil servants in particular. I think they've got a job called blocking, the blockers, rather than enablers, and we like to point that out wherever we can. So we're doing a lot of different things around equality law, parental leave, pathways to work, the pension age review, because that is constantly under review, and as women, you know, we know that we've had a real short end of the stick on that one. But we've also been involved in commercial exploitation, human trafficking, and I've given evidence in the Parliament on the work and the research that we've done, the WASP, as I said earlier. But the big thing that won't go away is men's violence against women and girls. It's getting worse. The figures are alarming in Scotland, and we have to get behind how is this getting worse. I don't have an answer to that, but we'll continue to research it, and we'll continue to campaign for women in Scotland as a Scottish Women's Convention. That is our passion, and that is our commitment. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. I'll just hold on. Well, thanks, Agnes, for that. Now, Fiona MacDonald.
Montgomery.
Montgomery, sorry. Where is she?
On Zoom.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Agnes, for all the good work that the Scottish Women's Convention does. I was really pleased that you were highlighting the scale of violence against women and girls. And I especially welcome the position of the SWC in rejecting describing prostitution as work, work in inverted commas. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and I was very pleased that the SWC recommended support for single-sex spaces for women following the discussions that you had. Personally, I feel single-sex spaces are essential in a range of places, particularly, for example, in rape crisis and women's aid services, as well as workplace changing rooms and hospital wards and so on. Now, I know when you touched on this, this has been a difficult area for discussion for some years. I've got a question is to ask, what ways forward do you think there might be in trade union discussions following on from the legal ruling last year in the For Women Scotland case that sex in the Equality Act is biological sex?
Right, another controversial area, thank you. Right, for me it's very simple. It's very, very simple. When I was vice chair of the regional committee here 5 years ago or whatever, and we ran over a period of 2 years the Unite Scotland's Women's Committee and the regional committee. We invited speakers in from a number of organisations who were involved in this type of work, because the Scottish Women's Conventions are consultative. We don't offer a service per se. And through all the speakers and the work that we did and the research which we did ourselves as a women's committee, we took a position that we would support the Nordic model. And if you go on the website today, you will see that Unite Scotland's logo is still there. So for me that means we're still supporting it. But if that position changes, then it should be done democratically. It should be through consultation with the members, and it should be brought before all the committees for them to have a say, invite their own speakers and come to another conclusion of that. But if democratically they decide, I'm disappointed in some of the trade unions, if I can say that here. I'm disappointed, and for a number of reasons. To say that prostitution is work, you haven't met the women. You haven't talked to the survivors. You haven't listened to the stories. You haven't listened to a 10-year-old girl tell you, when she stayed in the high flats in Springburn, that her daddy used to send her to the guy next door for a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of vodka, and she'd have to do what that man wanted. You haven't heard a 14-year-old girl being put in a room with a bunch of men and they did what they want with her because her uncle or her brother needed money for drugs. These are real stories, and I have so many more, and I don't want to shock or upset anyone, but we seem to get back to this idea of the debate not being driven by the real women who are in this. We'll never eradicate prostitution. It's there, and it's been there forever and ever. But what we can do is we can say to the purchaser, every time you pay for money for sex, do you know that girl doesn't want you, or that woman doesn't want? And that's the reality of it. So for me, trade unions saying that it's work, who negotiates the terms and conditions? What about the health and safety? There's a woman survivor who sits on a committee I'm involved in, and men used to urinate and defecate on her. Another woman who used to bring his wee girl's clothes, and she used to have to put them on and pretend she was his wee girl. Women don't do that. I don't know a woman who would say, oh aye, that's all right, okay, that's about to earn money. They don't. So I think for me, I can only tell you what women are telling us, and that's what women are telling us. If trade unions think that that's work, then I despair, because I know I'm proud of being a trade unionist all my working life, and I'm proud that we could look an employer in the eye and say, no, you're not doing that to us. Or, yes, we demand more than that. Respect us. We deserve respect. We're workers and we're working class people, and we deserve the respect from employers. And women who are forced into prostitution can't do that. They have to do what they're told. So that would be my take on that question. I hope that answers that.
Thank you. Irene.
I was at policy conference last year, and there was a motion up to ask Unite to consider prostitution, to organise women in prostitution as trade unionists. It was a very, very powerful presentation from one woman who was in prostitution. And what was interesting about that was the motion was remitted, but what Sharon Graham, our General Secretary, agreed to do was to set up a working group on this. So I think it's really important that we find out what stage that working group is, and we put in appropriate views to that. The other thing is that in, I think it was Germany, where what had happened was they had legalised abortion. They'd legalised prostitution, and what happened was women who were unemployed went to the equivalent of the job centre and were being offered work in prostitution because it was legalised. That legislation lasted for about 6 months because of the outcry against it. So it's, and there are some very articulate women who have chosen to go into prostitution, and sadly, in my view, they've got far too many people in the Scottish Parliament who take that view and who are afraid to come out of it. And I used to chair the Violence Against Women Partnership in Glasgow, and we spearheaded the Nordic model, which means that we consider, and the Scottish Government and Glasgow still considers, prostitution as part of the continuum of male violence against women. Yes. And I think we should never forget that.
We're celebrating International Women's Day, but women's rights are under even more attack than they have been for a long time. A lot of it's from the far right. I mean, I absolutely agree with what's been said. That there are, and the thing I wanted to raise, there's an organisation being set up called Women Against the Far Right, which I support and I think is a good idea. And they've been taking on the argument that somehow abuse of women and paedophilia and things like that are caused, it's a problem of immigration. It's actually no, it's a problem of capitalism and male violence against women in the way we're brought up and the way we're taught to see people, and it needs to be challenged. So I'm quite proud of this organisation, because in places like Falkirk they've taken on and exposed people who are claiming to represent, they're defending women and girls, as they say. In fact, they're abusers of women and girls. And actually,
Okay, I muted him.
Sorry. So I think that's an important issue in the present situation, where we've got organisations like Reform who are attacking women's rights, actually, as a political organisation, but further right than them as well, the re-emergence of fascists who are misogynists as part of their political persuasion, as well as saying the colour of people's skin or the fact that people are immigrants. They're actually misogynists, and I think it's important we organise against them as well.
Can I say something? I would be very surprised if the right wing didn't use the debate around immigration as an opportunity to peddle their own myths, because they can see it's like it is about they're fascist, and it is about saying here's a problem that they perceive as a problem. How can we use that to our advantage? And that's exactly what they're doing. There'll be one man who's done something, who happens to be an asylum seeker, an immigrant, and they'll all be painted with that brush. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, the other 90% of homegrown assaulters are just no mentioned.
Thank you. Right.
Up until a month ago, I was from Falkirk. I moved through here, that's why I've had to, but I'm now in this branch. But you're right, that is what they peddle. And I spoke to the woman this morning, actually, before I came in, about something entirely different. And their response to all that is just simple: the Epstein files. Millions and millions of emails. How many blacks and browns is there involved in that? Question is the answer is very little. It's difficult to find somebody with a brown or a black skin involved in the hairstyle files. So that tells you who the real hoodlums are. We've known that. It's white males, and that's, I'm sorry to say, but that's where we are. Anyway, my question is, you've talked about taking it out of the central belt, which is laudable, but like this room, we're not very representative of Scotland today when it comes to colour or religion, I would say. How have you managed to get beyond the white central belt?
Okay, right. The first thing is we don't deal in religion. We don't hold events about your religion. That's yours and nobody else's concern. In terms of women from different ethnic backgrounds, that was hard work because we had to get them to trust us. The hardest part was that. But we would write to these organisations or visit them, and then we realised that our board was not representative. It was all white women. As a blue nose, there were nearly all Celtic supporters, Jake. I had a wee problem there. But anyway, you have to have that determination. So what we did then is we went to like an organisation like the African, the Women's Network in Glasgow, and we deliberately invited them to our events rather than what we normally do. Is we're holding an event, register here, we would absolutely go to them. The same with Indian women, Sikh, Chinese, all of the different communities. We targeted them and said, you need to come in, let's do that. So in our International Women's Day, it's a bit, if you go on our website, you'll see some of our International Women's Day photographs, and you'll see such a diverse range of women, and all the politicians comment on it, so we can assure them that the voice they're hearing from us includes that diversity. But it is hard work to get women who belong to a particular community to trust you, and you just have to work hard at it.
Thank you. Right, one more speaker.
Just Chair.
No, you're right.
It's not a question towards Agnes, and I really appreciate the fact you've come here today and explained a lot in detail. But really we haven't come very far, have we? I remember the late Margot MacDonald, who raised the question of, and you talked about it then, of the women of the street. And my heart goes out to you, that as a society, it's a sad reflection, and a sense of decency is certainly lacking. But it worries me that 20, 30 years have passed, and here we are today, and these issues are more prevalent now than they've ever been. I really don't know what to say to that.
Right, there's a couple of things in there. I'm an eternal optimist. You have to be as a trade unionist, don't you? There's light at the end of this tunnel as long as it's not attached to the front of a big bloody train. But it's just that continuum of just keep banging back. We have made a lot of progress. And I think one of the examples for us, although sometimes I really think the Scottish Parliament deserves a serious kick up the bahookie, is in the installation of that, the election of that, it was trade union women in the main that campaigned for that parliament, but we also campaigned for representation of women. So there was like 40% of that was first in the world. When the Scottish Parliament was first elected, 40% of women, and we had good women in there. And these women produced these policies about violence against women. We got Women's Aid, we got Rape Crisis, we got all these organisations that didn't exist before. And the fact that child care, violence against women and girls, male violence against women and girls, all of these things are on the agenda. I can remember the first time I was elected, and I hope you don't mind me digressing just a bit, but to show you an example. The first time I was elected, I worked for the Royal Bank of Scotland, and I was in the finance sector union. And I was the first woman elected to the National Committee. That's the committee that met with the employer, did the negotiations. We've all got our different language depending where we come from, what it all means, like F and G. So I was elected, and the committee met 4 times in Scotland and 2 times in London, right, a year. So the first time it was going to London, I asked, where am I going? How am I getting there? What am I doing? They sent me a rail ticket on a train that left Glasgow Central at 10:30 at night to get into Euston in the morning. And I walked along to Holborn, to Bloomsbury. The hotel is now a Hilton Hotel along there. I'm trying to remember what it used to be called. But so I turned up there, absolutely shattered. Not a sleeper, by the way. Absolutely shattered to find they'd all flown down. All the guys had flown down and had been there overnight. So I realised quite quickly I better grow a backbone. So it was so I feel we have made advancement. What worries me is it gets clawed back. There's always some clown on the horizon that appears, some man telling us that women's places in the kitchen and blah, blah, blah. But I think we just have to keep digging in, and the women just have to work together. It's great when you find men allies. It's brilliant when you find men in the change union movement who get it, who want to help you, who believe that you've got a rightful place at the table, that your views matter, and we can't let that go. So I'm an optimist, but it's the lily-liveredness of the politicians not carrying through the legislation that they promise, and then they get elected and it disappears, and it's that we need to challenge.
Well, thank you very much. Now, we'll have to call a halt eventually. Agnes, let's have something else on. But I'd like to thank Agnes for coming, because it's, when you sit here and it's thrown silence about the place, you know everybody's listening. You know everybody wants to take on board what was said. And it was excellent.
Thank you.
And what we want to be able to say to you is that when you move on with your committees, it may be that you'll come back
To you?
and see us.
Yeah, aye.
And as you said earlier there that you needed to grow a back, well, I thought you were going to say you need to grow wings.
Oh, no.
Right, but
Well, I'm already an angel.
Can I say, Jake, can I just say, as a selfie supporter, that's the first time I've ever agreed with
I'm a minority group in the change union movement.
well, I better not
But
tell
let me
anybody on the health support.
I am not orange.
I'm not even going to ask you who's going to win the league this year.
I think it's Hams.
Oh, now you're talking. Now you're talking. Now, it is important that we had a speaker of this nature here today, because I know on Zoom that was a lovely point that was made. The only problem that we've got is sometimes when you say, well, ask questions, but everybody wants to get a statement. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to get their bit in and understand that. But Agnes answered everything very well, and I think it brought home quite a lot of things that we're inclined to forget about, that we don't realise are taking place. But Agnes, thank you very much for coming.
Just one final, a serious question, Mr.
Another time.
Are we going to present a donation to our organisation?
Oh no, not from you though. We were right to the regional committee. We wouldn't right to you. No. No. You need your money.
We can
There's a lot of fighting to do. Okay.
But you're right, you can make a donation.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Agnes. Thank you. Thank you very much.